The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind has managed to withstand the test of time and maintain the fans' interest over 20 years later. As an RPG, it was revolutionary, and it has earned its reputation as one of the greatest games of all time. As a game released in 2002, it did have its limitations, however, it is clear that the developers really pushed the game to excel beyond that, and the smaller, world-building aspects of the game were not neglected. Clothing in video games is commonly overlooked. I find that it's not really something that's ever properly discussed or analyzed. I, however, aim to change this. Today, we will be talking about the clothing in The Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelica. You like playing the Elder Scrolls games, well, I like reading the actual Elder Scrolls. My eyes hurt. Thank you guys so much for, at the time of recording this, 10,000 subscribers. Huge milestone. I'm really excited to be here and I'm really enjoying making this content as well. Now, I will admit, I haven't played Morrowind anywhere near as much as Oblivion or Skyrim. I've yet to actually fully finish the game, so that could be something fun to explore later on in this channel if you guys are interested. What I do remember from playing is just how alien and unfamiliar the world is in Morrowind. It's very difficult to find something to compare it to, although it did sort of remind me of Zangarmarsh in the Outlands World of Warcraft TBC expansion, which clearly the latter was inspired by Morrowind, but still. Because I played TBC way before I played Morrowind, that's kind of the association I had. When I was going through the game, I noticed that the clothing was one of those things that really kept you grounded as the player. Here you are in this really strange and bizarre world, but the way the NPCs dress is akin to other high fantasy type settings, and so it makes the game a lot easier to get into. Another thing that I remember from playing Morrowind is that the world is very unforgiving, so it's super important to have like a safe haven to go back to, and just seeing the NPCs dress in their normal clothing, going about their business, there was something so soothing about that. Especially if you've been chased by like 10 cliff racers all the way down to Balmora, you know? As I have done in my Oblivion clothing video, I will clarify that we are just talking about the clothing in the game, not the armor. We are looking at what the citizens, the merchants, the nobles, the common folk, and everyone else in between wear as they go about their normal lives, removed from the dangers outside the town or city walls. Morrowind clothing is not as explicitly defined to the player as it is in Oblivion. You learn a lot more about it as you go through the world and you meet the different factions, go to noble houses, or just wander the streets. Clothing can be obtained in one of the many clothing stores that you can find throughout the world. It can also be found just out in the world when you're exploring, and finally there is a third option, but I do not wish to explore that today. Hail Sithis. So today we're going to break it down by the following categories: robes, shirts, skirts, pants, gloves, and miscellaneous. We're going to look at some of the highlights and best pieces that in my opinion stand out the most, and discuss all of the interesting details and ways in which the clothing works in Morrowind. First things first, I do have some difficult and disappointing news to deliver. I do hope you'll consider not shooting the messenger in this case, but since we are on this topic, I feel obligated to tell you the truth. Our beloved Colovian fur helm is not considered clothing in the game. So you would have guessed that by now, Colovian fur helm and not fur hat, as so many of us remember it by. Honestly, that's like the weirdest Mandela effect ever. This means that it actually doesn't fit the parameters for this video, as it offers a base armor value of 7. Furthermore, there are no cosmetic, hoods, hats, or any other kind of headwear available in the game. Anything that goes on your head is considered armor. Now, I made the rules, so I can break them. Let's dedicate this moment in the video to the Colovian fur helm. When we think of clothing in Morrowind, I would argue that this stylish and magnificent creation is an absolute staple of the Morrowind fashion scene, and it is also the first thing that comes to mind. The vibrant yellow which makes you stand out in a good way, the stitching that holds it all together, the way your hair completely disappears when you wear it so as to not distract from its splendor. We are serving the 37th lesson of Vivec, and it is on drip. Average Colovian fur helm enjoyers, this moment in the video was dedicated to you. I just know that all of your jawlines are very sharp. And now let's bring our attention over to the clothing. So before breaking down each category, there are a couple of things to note. A key element of the clothing in Morrowind is layering. That's right, you can be stylish and practical. Clothing may be layered under and for some pieces over your armor. In the context of modern RPGs, this level of customization options is almost unheard of, and should we ever see something like that reintroduced again, I mean, depending on the company, but I would expect it would be behind some sort of paywall. This makes customization extremely versatile, and there are many different clothing / armor combinations to explore. I've actually added some of my favorites to show you later on in this video. Another thing to note here is the gender neutrality with clothing. So some of the meshes do change, however others were clearly designed with a specific gender in mind, and so they do look a bit silly when worn by a member of the opposite gender. The rest of the pieces are universally fitting, and we're not really seeing like the stark design differences for the clothing as we had in Oblivion. Let's discuss robes, which for me is probably my favorite element of clothing in Morrowind. To begin, I would just like to showcase a selection of robes. As you're watching this, you will see the vibrant colors and how different each robe looks from the next. Every robe here has some defining detail, whether it's the belt, ornamentation around the waist, the chest, or the neck. The game is obviously dated, but even with the low resolution, these robes have a lot of personality, and you can even get an idea for the kind of materials that they're made of. Sort of. I love the intricate metalwork and the way it's subtle but just enough to make each robe stand out in its own way. There is attention to finer detail like the embroidered sleeves, the varying color combinations that we see on each one, and the fact that a lot of these appear like something completely out of this world. Like for some of them I wouldn't even really know what to compare it to. Now, what if I told you that all of the robes I've just shown you are under the common robe category? So, when talking about clothing in Morrowind, it is further broken down into the following quality grades. We have common, expensive, extravagant, and exquisite. This means that what we've just viewed here is essentially the tip of the iceberg. Another side note before I show you the higher quality grade robes is that all of the clothing is named in the following way: common robes, expensive robes, extravagant pants, common pants, etc. They don't have individual names for the base clothing items like they had in Oblivion. So to further explain that, we can take an enchanted clothing item from Oblivion, such as the robe of glib tongues. This particular robe had a boost in personality and speechcraft, but the base item for this robe was known as the black and burgundy robes. Going back to Morrowind, it does of course have unique enchanted clothing, such as Feloth's robe with the restoration bonus, or Mara's skirt and Mara's shirt, but the base item names for these things are just common shirt, common skirt, or expensive robe. The thing that separates them within their quality grades are their item IDs, which made the process of obtaining all of the clothing for this video somewhat simplified. Somewhat. Even though they're all named the same, they do appear as different, colorful, and beautiful icons in your inventory. For me, they look very satisfying when displayed together like this. For the expensive robes, you will notice even more intricate details, and most of them again will have the bright colors. I think they appear richer, and the materials are starting to look more expensive as well. The blue robe here, for example, is probably my favorite with the gold embroidery, and if I had to guess the material, I would probably say it's silk or velvet. The extravagant robes feature more metalwork, focusing here again on some of the intricate details, beautiful and unique color combinations that perfectly fit the world, and then whatever this is looks insane. The exquisite quality for each of the categories have just one item, and for the robes it is this iconic gold / orange to red ombre garment. This would of course be made from the finest of materials, and in-game it is worn by different kinds of NPCs, mostly consisting of powerful mages, sorcerers, and then some high-ranking members of the great houses of Morrowind. For that, they are widely recognizable, and I would say that the somewhat exaggerated bright colors are a way in which these NPCs boast their wealth. However, if we're speaking strictly aesthetically, I wouldn't put this as my personal favorite robe. I think that we've definitely seen some better ones in the lower quality grade sections. In general, robes in Morrowind I find are worn by sorcerers, mages, anybody that has anything to do with magic. They seem to be like the most dripped out NPCs in the game. The robes in Morrowind are what make for some of the more unique armor / clothing combinations, and here are some that I found that I think look great. Here's an example from user Fat Tarbosaurus, where they combined the Royal Guard armor from the Tribunal expansion with these common robes that we can be seen worn by the Morag Tong Guild. User Umar5213 paired the Redoran Watchman's helm, I love that helm, with this extravagant robe. This combination looks sick. Let's move on to shirts. Like in Oblivion, I appreciate Morrowind for not just grouping a top and a bottom together and pushing that as an outfit, but having separate shirts and pants to, again, allow for more versatile combinations. Once again, I will showcase them to you here first. I really like the designs of the shirts in the game. In general, again, like the robes, I think that they're quite beautiful and unique, and the recolors don't feel too repetitive like they did in Skyrim. However, you will see that with some of these, especially when we start getting to the higher quality grade shirts, they were clearly made with the male character model in mind. I found that on the female character model, they just looked a bit silly. bulky, out of place. But the ones that do fit nicely I really like, and I think they fit the whole high fantasy aesthetic perfectly. Looking specifically at the Exquisite shirt here, which again is the only one of its kind in its particular quality grade, we can see it is quite over the top. The Elizabethan type puffed sleeves, the collar, the really bright gold with the black, this most definitely isn't one of the prettier shirts in the game, but it is one that I would imagine they wear to flaunt wealth. As we move further down with the clothing, you're gonna see that this is a common topic with the Exquisite clothing. Now let's take a look at the skirts, which give you a fantastic opportunity for some really unique armor/clothing combinations, again thanks to layering. Just as a reminder, skirts can be worn over greaves/pants. You will see as I'm showcasing them here, they are of varying lengths, so if your particular outfit idea requires the visibility of pants, or like the Imperial Guards, the tops of their boots, this is definitely for you. While I was showcasing them, for example, here you can see that I have the pants underneath. I thought that the skirts were beautiful. They're all quite different, and I appreciate that they're of varying lengths and it's not just like the same model retextured. I think that that is actually very, very nice. Here's the Exquisite skirt, and again, super over the top, not particularly tasteful. Kind of reminds me of the designer drip with the logos all over it. So again, I definitely have a preference for the lower grade skirts myself. This is what the outfit looks like when you put like the top and the bottom together. It doesn't even look like it fits well together. I feel like it's almost clashing, but you know how they say that money doesn't buy taste? I think this is a perfect example of that. We talk about layering a lot in terms of aesthetics, but if you really, truly don't care what your character looks like, then at least consider that the layering gives you so much freedom as additional slots for enchanted items, and from a technical point of view, you can be much more flexible with your build in this game. Looking at pants, we have quite a wide selection also within the different quality grades. I'll be honest, pants isn't something that I look into a lot in Morrowind. I just don't really notice them, and I feel that you can appreciate the shirts/skirts or robes a lot more, but pants are just pants. Like, they're clearly meant to be paired up with a top to make them make sense. I do think that they do suffer a little bit because, again, the resolution, the limitations, there's not a whole lot you can really do with them, but I still appreciate that there is some detail there. The designs that are there are quite nice, but overall I don't think that they're super remarkable. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments that have a deeper appreciation for the pants in Morrowind. Why? Let's talk about shoes, which again, not really a whole lot to say about them. They're even less noticeable than the pants for me. The Exquisite shoes are absolutely ridiculous looking. Like, if you put the whole outfit together, you are not screaming, you know, high society or wealth. This to me says court jester. Like, straight up. Looks like something that like fell out of the Shivering Isles, and not in a good way. I think I also have like a particular gripe with shoes in the game in general, because the first time I ever played I couldn't even wear any because I was a Khajiit. That's right, so fun fact, the beast races, namely Khajiit and Argonians, cannot wear shoes. They're also quite limited in the kind of helmets they can wear. However, the Colovian fur helm is possible to wear for these races. So again, just another reason why this thing is goated. Gloves in Morrowind are unique in the sense that they don't come in pairs. They go left glove and right glove as two individual items. They even have separate item IDs, so if you're getting one, you have to kind of go and separately get the other. I particularly like the extravagant gloves in the game. This is actually the highest grade that you can get. For some reason, there are no exquisite gloves. But yeah, I thought it was really weird how they're separated like this, because even the shoes are put together. Like, you don't have left shoe, right shoe, you have both of them together. So this is probably the first instance and the only instance that I can think of where gloves specifically are separated like this in an RPG, which I guess it's cool. Another additional slot. Now for the miscellaneous category, I have grouped rings, amulets, and belts together. The reason that I've done this is because none of these items are actually visible on NPCs or your character when they're equipped. Looking at belts first, I was initially surprised by this, but then I realized the way that the clothing is designed, it's not really feasible to put a belt on top of that. It would be super clunky, bulky, again, really out of place. But I'm so glad that they kept the belts in because, again, additional enchantment slot couldn't hurt. Speaking of that, it's almost criminal that it was taken out of the later games. Like, that should always have been a thing. I've already mentioned that Morrowind is a very, very detailed game, and this shows a lot here because even though the belts don't appear on your character, they still have individual icons for your inventory and the designs that they appear as when folded on the ground. Same goes for amulets and rings, and I was particularly surprised by the amulets not being visible because in my mind, I could always clearly remember the exquisite amulet design, but unless you mod the game, it does does not show on character models. Still, I do appreciate the unique designs for each of the amulets and their different quality grades, and I find it funny how even though you don't see them, they are some of the more iconic items like engraved in my brain when I think of Morrowind. And this, ladies and gentlemen, concludes my clothing in Morrowind video. By now you can tell that this is a topic that I'm quite passionate about, and I want to admit that I've already done a deep dive into the clothing in Morrowind a few years back, just in my own time without creating any content, because I thought it was so different, I thought it was so beautiful, and going back into this again, like, I have to say I'm not disappointed. I think Morrowind does a fantastic job with the clothing. Being someone that really appreciates this particular element, like, I'm always very excited to see it done well. Again, just consider that this game came out in 2002. They had a lot of limitations compared to what we have now, and the fact that these details are still there and they were worked on, they were all individually designed, it doesn't feel like it was like sloppy, half done. They definitely went all the way with this. Like in the previous videos, I really love seeing your discussions in the comments, so let me know what your favorite armor/clothing combinations are, and I might just steal them. Huge thanks to everybody again who came and supported my channel, contributed to its growth. I'm having a lot of fun making this content, and I'm really excited by this little community that we've formed. You're all very welcome here. As always, if you've enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. I'm through talking to you.